Hey guys, it's Taran and welcome to the On Track channel and to 5 things in 5 minutes for the 2022 Bahrain Grand Prix. So after about 13 years of disappointment and as many world titles as Man City have Champions Leagues, Ferrari looked to not only be in a position to win races but to mount a title challenge as well. With Charles Leclerc leading for pretty much the entire race and Carlos Sainz sitting comfortably in third, the performance of the car was impressive, and only rivals Red Bull, more specifically Max Verstappen, looked to have the pace to match them at the top. And I think that's the part that's most impressive. We've seen on countless occasions in the past in Formula 1 that it's not necessarily the fastest car that will win every race, although that does obviously help. But the fact that Ferrari do seem to have the fastest car out the gate, as well as having a driver pairing that look to be performing at a very good level, will be encouraging. The question now will be if the team can develop at the rate of those below them. With Red Bull hot on their heels, they can't afford to lose much ground as it will quickly start to cost them points. We've also seen in the past that the team have been in a position to possibly win titles but not got over the line, such as 2010, 2012, and 2017, and I guess kind of 2018. Look, you get the point. But for now at least, it's as good of a start as they could have hoped for. Following the conclusion of the 2021 season, Honda pulled out of F1 and broke away from their partnership with Red Bull as an engine supplier, making them 2 for 2 for announcing they were leaving the sport and then having their car go on to win. But this exit led to Red Bull taking over the intellectual property and running the engines themselves as Red Bull powertrains. They'd have been looking for a good start, but this really wasn't the case, as only one of their cars, driven by Yuki Tsunoda, actually finished all 57 laps. First it was Pierre Gasly who had his engine go up in flames, with the report being that it was an MG UK failure. And while yes, some things will fail, just look at certain F1 rookies last year, it's not great to have a terminal and rather spectacular failure in your first race as an engine supplier. Moving to Verstappen and Perez, who both retired within 3 laps at the end of the race, it was fuel pump issues. And no, the brilliant coincidence of an Italian manufacturer providing a standard part that DNFs both Red Bulls to give Ferrari a 1-2 is not lost on me. But from the sounds of things, it's an issue that potentially could have been avoided, as the problems with the fuel pump occurs when there's very little fuel left, such as at the end of the race. And according to reports, Red Bull hadn't tested their cars at such low levels. If only they'd had 6 whole days to test their cars and find these issues. Luckily, it should be an easy fix with parts being replaced or better insulation used to stop them from failing, so if things go to plan, it shouldn't be an issue for Red Bull in the future. One of the more encouraging and feel-good stories from the weekend was that of Haas F1. Coming into the weekend, the general feeling around the team was that they could be up from the back towards the midfield, but as it turned out it would be much better than that, with the car driven by Kevin Magnussen comfortably occupying 7th, an effective best of the rest position for much of the race. And while yes, it's very possible that things may change, like the team don't exactly have the best track record over the past few years, it's definitely an encouraging start to the season. Like Ferrari, the fact that the actual pace of the car was good is probably the biggest positive to take away from it all, and that's before you take into account an expected improvement from Mick Schumacher, who after the race said that once he'd been spun by Ocon on the opening lap, the car didn't feel quite the same. So for him to pick up 11th place with a car not quite at 100% and a drive that probably wasn't his best is actually a good sign for the team. It may well be that the pace of the car is linked to the Ferrari doing well, as the teams have a very close connection, meaning that improvements from Ferrari will likely trickle down into the Haas car. But given how the cars have a lot of differences from a design perspective, a big chunk of improvement will have come from the Haas team themselves. And after how they completely wrote off last season, it would seem they've played an absolute masterstroke by taking Mazepin's money in 2021, developing the 2022 car with it, and then kicking him out at the first opportunity. One of, if not the biggest disappointments over the weekend was the complete lack of pace from the McLaren F1 team. They were effectively so far back that the 57 laps became a bit of a practice session, and while that may be the best thing to do for the race, it's not certainly a trend they'll want to continue. The lack of pace did come as a bit of a surprise, as the general feeling among those in the paddock was that the team could well be around the level of Mercedes, fighting to be the 3rd fastest team. However, it seems that the majority of the issues they had in Bahrain continued into the first race, as both cars spent the majority in the bottom 5. Just wondering how Lando is feeling about his big contract extension right now. The question though for the team will be if they can begin to recover some of the ground they've lost over the winter, with it still not 100% clear if the lack of pace is due to specific issues they've had over testing or the general design of the car not being good enough. And finally, with what is probably the most important takeaway from the weekend, the 2022 regulation changes do look to provide closer racing, summed up by Verstappen and a slower Red Bull than Leclerc's Ferrari in front being able to stay close enough to go down the inside of a championship rival on not 1, not 2, but 3 consecutive laps. And while it eventually overworked Verstappen's brakes and tyres, it did allow us to see a car that can mount a sustained challenge. Plus, further down the order we saw a number of overtakes and battles, but Bahrain is typically a fairly good track for overtaking, and so the question now is if the trend of closer racing will carry over to other tracks. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you very much for watching. Do make sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe for more F1 content, but until next time, take care.